Welcome to another edition of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum, where all voices matter. The need to develop and attract young talent is a critical element of our economic future. New insights and trends have been identified in a recent study by the Canada West Foundation. And here to discuss is Stephany Laverty, their policy analyst. Welcome to the program, Stephany.
Thanks for having me.
So I guess first, what are our needs as in Canada? What needs do we have of young talent and labor in this country?
So I think what we're seeing is that we really need young people to kind of lead the way. There's a lot of changes coming to the workforce with automation, digitalization, transformation. And I think young people are really going to be kind of the leaders of that change moving forward. They're going to be the ones learning about what new technologies need to be used in university, and then they can bring that into the workplaces.
So, maybe just start into your study. What were the findings, and when it comes to global talent attraction, what are the trends?
Yeah, so our study looked at Alberta youth aged 15 to 30, and really trying to understand what drives them and what motivates them to choose a place and where they want to live and work and grow. So we really found that there's kind of three main stated decision points for youth. So when they're leaving high school, are they going to decide to go into the workforce, or are they going to go to post-secondary? And then once they've been working for a while, and once they've completed post-secondary, where are they going to go then to grow their careers? And then finally, when they reach about the 30-year-old stage, do they want to settle down, have a family? Where can they afford to do that, and where do they want to do that? So that's kind of what's happening domestically with young talent. And then globally, we're really seeing this transition to kind of work from anywhere opportunities, right? So you don't necessarily have to live where you work. So how does that play into where people decide where they want to be? At the same time, we also know we're facing an increasingly aging population, retirements, those sorts of things. So how's that going to influence and drive, attraction retention strategies globally? Japan had a really interesting study that they did for the first time, projecting where their talent pool is going to come from looking out to 2040. They estimate they're going to need just under 7 million foreign workers to come into Japan. So that's kind of where the playing field is. We're seeing people realize that they need talent, and they're going to have to look outside of their borders increasingly for talent.
So, just generally, what are your findings, both domestically and internationally? Then, after you've asked those questions, what sort of answers are you getting?
Yeah, so I would say domestically, youth are really looking for, it's not just the economic piece. Values are changing what they're looking for. They want to live in diverse and inclusive communities. Um, they want jobs that reflect their values. They want work-life balance, those sorts of things, right?
Right.
Um, and then globally, I would say Canada, and one of the things that I think we're seeing is that Canada needs to be more strategic in how it assesses its positioning globally, and where we relate in this global competition for talent, which is what we started kind of calling it in our future work and learning brief. So I think we need a better understanding what migrant workers and immigrant workers are looking for, and where Canada stacks up, similar to what we did with this Alberta study.
Right, right. So, work-life balance, is that a new trend, or has that been something that's been growing over time? Do you know?
We didn't look at it specifically in kind of that trend in this
Right.
report. I think with COVID, it's definitely what we've seen is that it's definitely increased kind of that pressure a little bit for work-life balance. People learned that they could work from home and get
Right.
stuff done around the house while they were working. I know me personally, we work remotely, and I would do the dishes on my lunch break or stuff like that, right? So
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We're speaking with Stephany Laverty. She is a policy analyst at Canada West Foundation, discussing some findings on attracting youth talent. I guess specifically in the province of Alberta. Is that right, Stephany?
So our research was Alberta-based, but
Yeah,
we
yeah,
also looked at kind of trends going
right.
country a little bit.
Sure. Okay. We're going to continue with this conversation after the break. We can take a brief hiatus for the break. We'll be back after these messages. Welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with Stephany Laverty. She is a policy analyst at the Canada West Foundation. Stephany, we're talking a little bit about this project you did on youth talent and attraction and attitudes. I'd love to know, did you do any research on generally how young people think about their futures and their places in society? Is that part of what you did?
So we really looked at, as I mentioned, kind of the life stages and how
Right.
that influences their decisions. And then we also looked at how they understand the world. So where do they get their information from?
Hmm.
So social media was definitely the major one, friends and family. So that really helped them determine where they kind of sit. They didn't really pay as much attention to kind of local news, international news. That wasn't as much of a factor in kind of what influenced their opinion and how they saw themselves. There was also a strong um, kind of the influence of perceptions of youth, how they perceive each other, how they perceive places, how they perceive sectors, really influences how they choose where they go and what they do.
Right. So do they see themselves more as part of a global youth movement, or do they see themselves more as part of their town or their village or their city locally?
Yeah, so we asked kind of how do you identify? Do I identify with your city? Do I identify as Canadian? Do I identify with your province? For those within Alberta, it was those within Calgary and Edmonton tended to identify with their city or the as a Canadian more, so as a Calgarian or Canadian. And then those kind of in the rural areas were more likely to identify with their province or as a Canadian than with their kind of municipality. In Vancouver, we also surveyed Vancouver and Toronto youth. That city identity was again very strong,
Right.
and then less with the province, and then Canadian was stronger than the provincial identity in kind of the urban areas.
Indeed. I'd love to know, maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't, how this connects with our immigration strategies as a country, or even even in your province. Have you given any thought to that at all?
Yeah, so we've been looking at what's kind of happening with immigration, and StatsCan actually released the latest quarterly numbers at the end of September. So between Q1 and Q2 this year, Canada actually had its largest increase in immigration uh, since it was the fastest population growth since 1957, and the largest growth between quarters since immigration has been recorded.
Right.
So we are definitely seeing an uptick in immigration. We also know diversity of immigration is also increasing. So, ethnic background, religious background, that's also more diverse than it historically was.
So, are we on the right track with our immigration strategies in your estimation?
So I think it depends on what the ultimate goal is. If we're trying to bring in more workers to fill the workforce and we're just looking at it from a quantity basis, I think we are increasing. But if we're looking for workers to fill specific gaps in the labor market, say healthcare or other areas, we need to do a better job of credentialing and credential recognition. There's been a few changes in that sphere that we've seen very recently. So Ontario has mentioned it's going to be eliminating its Canadian experience requirements. That's one approach. And then Alberta, the College of Physicians and Surgeons, for specific countries, they're actually going to reduce part of the certification process within the province. So it takes less time for them to actually get certified to work within the province. But that credential recognition and credentialing and having kind of a common
Right.
language of credential and competency across nations is still very, very much in the early stages.
Right. But it seems to be going in the right direction, do you think?
I think so. I think we're getting there, and I think we're having those discussions more so than we did in the past.
Right, right. We will continue our discussion here with Stephany Laverty. She is a policy analyst at Canada West Foundation as we sort of unlock the puzzle, or at least discuss the puzzle of youth talent attraction, which is a challenge not only for Canada, but for the rest of the world as well. Please stay tuned. We'll be back after these messages. Again, trying to get a handle on where we are and where we should be going. Are there things that Canada, other provinces like Alberta or other provinces should be doing differently to meet the challenges that you have identified, Stephany?
So I think we need to do a better job of understanding kind of what the current structures are, what current policies are in place, and then really mapping out where the country wants to go and thinking more strategically, both domestically and globally, on what we want to do collectively as a country and then individually within the provinces. It's hard because education policy is kind of set at the provincial level. There are provincial immigration programs to bring in immigrants that are tied to federal kind of limits. And so I think kind of trying to bridge the jurisdictional gap is maybe kind of the biggest challenge facing this whole sector.
So does that require more working together then?
Yeah, I would say more collaboration for sure. Bringing together think tanks like ourselves, educators, employers, government officials from all levels. I think it's a very broad and large conversation that we need to be having.
Now, in your research, have you analyzed other jurisdictions, what they're doing? I'm thinking of Australia or European countries, et cetera.
Yeah, so on the foreign credentialing piece, Europe is actually piloting, the European Commission is actually piloting a EU-based credentialing system to allow that easier transfer of credentials across borders within EU and to remove those barriers. Um, in terms of youth talent attraction and retention, we did look at what's happening. I mean, it was an Alberta comparator, so we did look at Texas and Austin specifically,
Right.
and kind of what's happening there. So they have at the state level, they have a very business-friendly tax base, but then within the city, they have a very progressive, kind of youth-focused, youth-oriented local government. And we thought that mix was really interesting and really compelling and something that could be comparable to Alberta. We also looked at digital nomad visas, which is essentially this kind of work from anywhere digital talent
Right.
as a way to bring them into the country and let them kind of explore cities outside of kind of the traditional tech hubs of Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, let them explore what the tech sector is like and kind of build, communities of practice within Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Regina, the Atlantic regions, and let them really explore and see, Canada has tech going on, not just in these major centers.
Yeah, and is that assisting in retaining then and encouraging this talent pool to stay engaged?
I think it would help challenge kind of the perceptions that we're seeing where, if you want to work in tech, you don't just have to work in these areas. And it would help them kind of also be ambassadors and go back to their, if they come here on a visa and kind of explore the sector, they can go back home and say, hey, Calgary or, New Brunswick has a lot going on in terms of tech, and maybe it's a place we want to look at, and maybe it is more affordable than some of these bigger cities.
Um, what about, we talked a little bit about life-work balance. Are
Mhm.
the attitudes generally to jobs and careers, does that seem to be changing based on your research?
Yeah, I think there is more of a, I mean, we titled our report Work to Live, right? Like there is that attitude that you're working because you want to, engage in other pursuits beyond your career. You want to go skiing on the weekend, or you want to have a family, or you want to, practice an artistic endeavor. You can do those things, and it's not just about working, nine to, you know, whatever.
Right, right, right. And let's talk a little bit about skilled trades and tradespeople. Did you get into that at
Mhm.
all?
Yeah, so one of the things we're seeing, one of the trends we're seeing, so we didn't talk about this specifically in our research for the report, but we're seeing from other research that there does seem to be less of an uptake of the skilled trades among youth. And there is kind of that, we did uh, look at the perception in Alberta that oil and gas is still very dominant in the province. Um, and a lot of people kind of have these perceptions of these jobs as, not environmentally friendly, kind
Right.
of dirty jobs, and really the need to challenge those perceptions.
Stephanie, we're
Um,
going to have to take a brief break. Sorry, we do have a commercial break here. Hold that thought. We'll come right back to it. Please stay with us. And welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with Stephany Laverty. She's a policy analyst at Canada West Foundation. We're discussing some research that the Canada West Foundation has done on youth attitudes, which animate kind of the policy discussions on youth talent attraction. We were just getting into talking about skilled trades and tradespeople. Please continue your thoughts on that, Stephany.
yeah, so I think one of the things is that we really learned that we need to challenge perceptions of sectors. Traditional sectors, they're also evolving and changing. And then kind of new and emerging sectors. So demonstrating what jobs and careers can be built in those. So traditional oil and gas, kind of where how those jobs are transforming for kind of the future, and then where kind of these new jobs are emerging in renewables and kind of clean tech, so that people can really understand where the cross competencies are across those sectors and where new competencies are kind of emerging and needing and where they can go.
So do you think government has to do a sales job then to attract young people into those sectors?
I don't think it's government alone. I think it's, industry needs to, help communicate those things. And it's not just one level of government. I think it's all levels of government, local, provincial, federal, really need to kind of communicate. Again, that kind of strategic lens of where do we want to go collectively with our workforce development system, workforce in general, where are we trying to get to?
And do you think, let's keep it on your home base for a second, is that starting to happen in Alberta, for instance?
Oh, yeah, there's great conversations happening here on kind of the future of talent. Calgary's emerging as a big tech sector hub. Edmonton is really pushing into AI and biotechnology. So we're definitely seeing, and we did put together, it's on our website, but we did put together an infographic for everyone to kind of see where the different opportunities are and where the conversations are happening around different sectors and where they're going and kind of what they need from the future workforce.
Is it having an impact, do you think?
I think so. Yeah, we had some really good uptake on the infographic for sure, and we've done a lot of talking with students and groups on how to better communicate the pathways. I was actually at one of the classes at Mount Royal University. Dr. David Finch, who wrote the report with us, his marketing class. We tasked them with developing a digital tool for navigating career pathways for youth that would be usable in Calgary.
Right. What else do you want to highlight from your research, Stephanie? We've got about a minute and a half left.
Well, there's a lot going on. I think just the overall that there is a lot happening right now. It is hard to stay on top of everything going on in the world. And I think we do need to continue to have these conversations And really, we do need to come together and be more strategic in how we approach these things.
Do you think that you're going to be working with other policy analysts and other foundations and think tanks in order to pursue this then?
Oh, yeah, we're very collaborative. We're in discussions with people all over the place about pretty much everything I talked about today. So,
Good, good, good. So let's get our crystal ball out. I like to do this sometimes, looking at some of the challenges that you're tracking about youth talent and both domestic and international. Are you
mhm.
generally optimistic about things, or are there some storm clouds on the horizon?
One of the things I'm really watching is this language around friendshoring that we're seeing in kind of the supply chains. What is that going to mean for, you know, Canada and our
Mm.
labor force? If we, bring those industries back into Canada or North America, do we have the capacity and the workforce to actually support those efforts? What do we need to do with our, kind of trilateral partners, the US and Mexico, if we're talking about, North American supply chains? And what do we need to do with our other allies as we move forward? And if that's going to be where these things shift, do we have the workforce to support that?
Our time is up. Stephany Laverty, I want to thank you for coming on the program. Very interesting discussion.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Very interesting discussion about talent, youth talent in particular, how to attract it, how to retain it, how to make sure our economy is accepting that. Lots to be done in that area. Thanks for watching today.